This is Robert Manni, host of Guys TV. Check out my bonus footage with Larry Grobel reading 2 short stories right here. Thanks for your support. Okay, so Larry's going to read one of his stories. He's got a couple of books of short stories, and as he mentioned, he's written 20 already this year, and I invited him to read a story to our listeners. So here he is, Larry Grobel and Second Chances.
All right, this is from my latest book. All of these stories were written during the pandemic, 2020. What are you thinking about my mother? What about her? How she died? She didn't suffer long enough. It started when she fell before the cancer. What I was thinking about was the night she died. I should have gotten in bed with her, held her. She was so fragile. Maybe she wouldn't have wanted that. She was in pain. The morphine helped her pain, and who doesn't want to be held when they're dying? We knew she wouldn't make it through the night. Are you feeling guilty about it? Sort of. It's been a while, I know, but why didn't I do that? I remember we were all tired, taking turns sitting up with her. But when it was my turn, I held her hand, but I don't remember hugging her. Maybe you did. You probably did. Just wish I had a do-over on that one. So many things we can do again, make amends, but not with death. You've got one chance, and then you just have to live with it. I wish I had done things differently when my mother died. I remember that she kept pointing to something in the kitchen. She wanted something, but I didn't know what. I should have tried harder to understand. I felt so helpless. Maybe she wanted ice cream. Ha! Second chances. Would that be a genie wish to go back in time and do something differently? Or would that be a wasted wish? If you only had one, would it be to hug your mother on her deathbed or get $100 million tax free? Prevent your father's second stroke or have good health until your death at 110? Silly questions. You can't go back. You shouldn't look back. Life is life. It's that simple. You make mistakes. You surprise yourself. You laugh. You cry. And then you die. That's what Gabriel thought after thinking about his mother. He also thought about all the stories that took characters back in time or ahead into the future. Where did writers come up with these stories? Were they all tapping into their imaginations, or could they, even just one of them, have had a true visitation? Not by a time machine or a magic carpet or with superhuman powers that could reverse time, but by something more profound, something spiritual, or maybe even alien. On the day Gabriel felt remorse about his mother's death, the earth slipped between the sun and the moon. It may have affected his sleep that night because he had a series of unusual dreams. Each dream brought him back to significant moments of his life, but the outcome of these moments was slightly askew from how they had happened. The first, not surprisingly, was with his mother, the night she passed. When he asked her if she would like him to lay down with her, she waved him off. Mom, let me hold you. She couldn't talk, but she could shake her head. She shook her head. Mom, I'd give up $100 million just to hold you for 5 minutes. She opened her eyes and gave him a puzzled look. When he saw her mouth moving, he put his ear to her lips. Are you stupid? She whispered. No, Ma, you're worth more than that. You're worth all the money in the world. Shush, she said. Let me die in peace and not thinking that I raised a stupid son. The dream that followed this was about the only time Gabriel had physically punished his 12-year-old son. The boy had been caught stealing a baseball glove, and Gabriel felt he had to leave an impression on his body that he wouldn't forget. He found a tree branch and whipped it twice across the boy's bottom. It hurt Gabriel's psyche more than it did his son's behind, and he could never forgive himself for such abuse. In his dream, it was his son who picked up the switch and whipped Gabriel across his chest, his arms, and his face. When Gabriel sank to his knees, his son kicked him in his head and ran away. His third dream took place at Yankee Stadium, where Gabriel grabbed a foul ball off the bat of Derek Jeter. A young boy had dropped it from his glove, and in the scramble to retrieve it, Gabriel managed to pick it up. The boy looked up, hoping Gabriel would give it to him, but Gabriel said, I have a kid at home who will want this. In his dream, Gabriel gives the ball to the boy, but then the boy's father punches him for going after the ball in the first place. When Gabriel awoke the next morning, he felt as though a weight had lifted from his body. When his wife said at breakfast that she had been thinking about what they were talking about the day before, Gabriel just smiled. You mean second chances? Forget about it. Second chances aren't any better than what you did the first time around. Could even be worse. His wife couldn't help wondering how he came to this conclusion. What about that genie wish? She asked. You mean the money or the hug? Take the money, Gabriel said. Why be stupid about
Oh, love it. Very good. Very good. Very, very good. Short, to the point, beautifully written. Thank you. You want to do
it?
one more?
Sure, be happy to. Let me find something short.
Okay, this is Robert Manni. We've got Larry Grobel. We had two terrific interviews, and Larry interviewed me. I learned a lot just by him interviewing me, and we've done one short story. Larry's looking for another one now, but we're tagging it on. This is bonus time of Guys Radio with Robert Manni, and I think we're ready to go.
Okay, this one is called Listen. Every day for 50 years, with just a few exceptions, John voiced whatever he was thinking to his wife, Mary. If he read something interesting, he would tell her about it. If he heard a song he liked or read a good book review or saw something outrageous on the news, he would tell Mary what he thought. When they took walks, he talked about nature. When they took trips, he talked about history and architecture. When they went shopping, he talked about food. John loved to talk. When they watched TV, he commented on the characters and often predicted the plot twists. When they saw a movie, he always had an opinion of what they had seen. But did Mary love to listen? She certainly had 50 years worth of opportunities. She didn't play sports, so she didn't get a chance to hear what he had to say during his golf, tennis, and pickup basketball games, though he described them in detail when he got home. She didn't like violence, so she didn't share his enthusiasm for gangster, horror, or zombie stories. What Mary was patient, tolerant, calm, non-combative, humble, demure. John always told people he had married a saint. He praised the way she cared for others. He extolled her kindness, her selflessness, her sharing. He told anyone, sorry,
It's
he told
okay.
anyone who would listen that he'd rather eat her cooking than dine at a Michelin-rated restaurant. He lived a very fulfilled life with no complaints about the partner he chose to share it with. Had he known what others would find out after he left this world, he probably would have been shocked. That's because when his brother had asked Mary to speak at his funeral, Mary said simply, I wouldn't know what to say. Of course you would, her brother-in-law said. Who knew him better than you? He had opinions about everything, and you heard all of them. Not really, Mary said. John liked to talk, but I rarely listened. How is that possible? He asked. We got along, Mary said. That's all I know, and probably all I could say. He liked to talk, yes, but he didn't ask questions. He didn't want to know what I thought about the things he talked about. Had he done so, I would have had to listen. But I learned long ago how to tune out the chatter that came from John's mouth. I had plenty to think about, and that's what I did. I thought about the books I read, the movies we saw, the music I heard. Whatever my eyes saw, or my ears heard, or my mouth tasted, or my fingers touched, I thought about that. John had his own thoughts about all of that, of course, and he voiced those thoughts. It used to crowd my head until I realized that if I just let him go on, his voice could become like elevator music to me, a background hum, a buzz like meditation mantra that that allowed me to go deeper into my own thoughts. I really wouldn't know what to say about John that people wouldn't already know. I would much prefer to hear what others had to say. You mean to tell me, her brother-in-law asked, that you tuned him out completely? For 50 years? He always told me you were his best companion, his closest confidant, the person he told everything. Now you're telling me you heard nothing? That what he said for 50 years went in one ear and out the other? We had a strong marriage, Mary said. We didn't need to listen to each other to love each other. Who was his favorite writer? No idea. Did he prefer Billie Holiday or the Beatles? Beats me. What was his drink of choice? That one I know because I pour him his scotch before dinner. I'm flabbergasted, Mary. Really, I am. John would be too, I'm sure. Don't be too sure. I think he knew. Knew that you didn't listen to anything he had to say, Knew that instead of the bond he felt between you, there was a gap a mile wide? If he hadn't died and heard this, it would have killed him. Nonsense, Mary said. You're overreacting. No marriage is the same. We never argued. He never raised his voice, and neither did I. Our sex life was good, as was our marriage. You might as well have been deaf. Then I wouldn't have heard the things I heard outside of John's jabber. Why don't you think about what you would like to say about your brother, and I'll listen. What I have to say, we hardly spoke since we moved to different states. So talk about growing up together. Like, that would be nice. We fought a lot, Mary. I don't want to talk about that at his funeral. So you're saying that you, too, have nothing to say. I find that strange. What about his friends? They'll talk about him. I'm sure they will. But you won't? Oh, I'll talk to him in my own way, just not at his funeral. What we had isn't something I'd want to share. But you just did with me. Yes, I did. And what I heard was that you, who grew up in the same house with him, John, have nothing to say about him. That makes me sad. And you don't even know what he had to say. Guess that's why we're here now, to honor a man we both loved in our own way. The church was packed with people who came to pay their respects and to listen to those who stood up to tell stories about John. His golfing buddies spoke of what a crummy golfer he was. His tennis partner joked about his lousy serve. His poker cronies laughed at all the tells he displayed. His business associates talked about how much John admired Mary. One after another of his friends and acquaintances related something new, something funny, something touching about John. It was a lovely way to say goodbye to a good and decent man who liked to talk, and whose wife preferred not to listen, for they had had what most would have called a perfect marriage.
I love it. Now, were these, what inspired this one? Were the people you know,
Uh,
or
this
symbolic, representative?
I'm just trying to think. I think it inspired the fact that I was talking a lot to something, and then I said something else to my wife, and she looked at me. I said, "Do you ever listen to anything I say?" That's how that one came about. And the other one was about the hug. I said, I was thinking about my mom's death, and that, I sat with her the last night and everything, but I did not get into bed with her, and I mean, we were giving her morphine. She was ill, but I feel, why didn't I? I was asking myself, why didn't I just hold her? And she was 94 at the time. So I wrote that story. I mean,
Okay.
you don't know where stories come from, but
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, Larry Grobel, my special guest, Guys Radio bonus time, our first one. We had an interview. Larry interviewed me. We got two stories. We're blessed. And thank you so much for being here, Larry.
Oh, it was fun, Rob. Thank you.